feeling broken on the wheel. This expression is firmly rooted in our language, yet only few have an inkling of the horrifying reality behind this idiom. Breaking on the wheel was arguably one of the most barbaric and agonizing executions in human history, applied over many centuries, according to old legal books like the important medieval Sachsenspiegel. This punishment was exclusively reserved for the worst of the worst, for sacrilege, robbery, high treason, or murder committed during arson. But the roots of breaking on the wheel reach much deeper than the Middle Ages. It was allegedly practiced as early as antiquity and survived until the early 19th century. The execution was carried out publicly, before the eyes of the crowd, and aimed not only at death but also at maximum deterrence. The punishment itself usually consisted of two nightmarish parts. The first part was a refined torture that did not aim for immediate killing. The condemned, often naked for further humiliation, was firmly tied to a scaffold. Then the executioner grabbed the wheel, a massive wooden wheel with spokes, often ironclad, and sometimes even fitted with additional spikes or blades. The executioner methodically shattered the victim's bones, blow by blow, usually starting with the shins and gradually working up to the arms. The number of blows and even their rhythm could be prescribed by the court depending on the severity of the crime. It was not uncommon for sharp-edged wooden blocks to be placed under the joints to amplify the effect of the wheel. In the end, the victim's limbs were a pulp of broken bones and torn tissue. If the condemned had not already lost consciousness from the hellish pain, his torments were unbearable. Only in the rarest cases did this phase end with a quick fatal blow to the neck or chest, and even more rarely, for less severe offences, the execution was carried out from top to bottom. The first blow killed, and the body was only broken afterwards for display. But in most cases, the second, final stage of the torture followed. The victim's broken body was either tied to the wheel or literally woven into its spokes, which was only possible thanks to the broken bones that allowed the limbs to be deformed. Then this terrible living or already lifeless construct was erected on a high pole for public viewing. Here the torments ended foremost. The executioner gave the victim the coup de grace by strangulation or decapitation. But not all of the lucky ones were granted this mercy. Sometimes the wheel with the condemned was hung over a fire or even thrown directly into the flames to turn death into a true hell. The longest and most agonizing agony occurred when the victim was simply left hanging on the wheel until death occurred naturally. Medieval chronicles report shocking testimonies of people who spent hours or even days conscious on the wheel. One such example, mentioned by historians, is a man who allegedly survived on the wheel for 4 days and 4 nights in 1348 before taking his last breath. Was there any chance of rescue? Yes. The only glimmer of hope lay in divine intervention. If something went wrong during the execution, for example, the wheel broke or fell from the pole, this was interpreted as a sign from above. The punishment ended immediately, and the condemned was granted freedom. These rare but documented cases, including in the medical literature of the time, describing the treatment of survivors' wounds, add an astonishing nuance to this cruel history. However, if no miracle occurred, the lifeless body remained hanging on the wheel, decomposed, and became prey for wild animals. This is one reason why archaeological finds of those broken on the wheel are extremely rare, despite the abundance of written sources. Only two confirmed skeletons have been found in Germany and Austria. But the horror of breaking on the wheel was not limited to the physical suffering and even death. According to medieval religious beliefs, the mutilated body and the lack of a proper Christian burial could deprive the soul of the possibility of resurrection and eternal peace. Thus, breaking on the wheel was doubly terrible, as it was believed to condemn the victim not only in this life, but also in the next. Although the heyday of breaking on the wheel was in the Middle Ages, it experienced a kind of revival in the 18th century, particularly in German lands and France. In some regions like Bavaria and Hesse-Kassel, this execution was only abolished in the 19th century. The last known case of breaking on the wheel in Prussia occurred in 1841, when the robber and murderer Rudolf Knupfel was broken on the wheel for the murder of the Bishop of Ermland. The history of one of the most terrible tortures thus ended only a little over 180 years ago.